Could a sitting US president actually cancel the elections? Not protest it, not complain about it, not claim fraud afterward, but actually cancel it, delay it, or just ignore the results and stay in power? This question has been floating around a lot lately, especially when people talk about Donald Trump and the next election cycle. Some say it's impossible, others say, well, what if he just does it anyway? So instead of guessing, speculating, or arguing in circles, I decided to do what this channel always does. I asked the AI a very direct question, with no politics, no emotion, and no conspiracy framing. Just, is it actually possible in real life? And the answer is a lot less dramatic than the internet makes it sound, but also a lot more revealing. But before we get into it, if you like calm, fact-based breakdowns of political questions, consider subscribing to the channel. I post new videos like this every week and it really helps the channel grow. Alright, let's get into the chat. Here's the exact prompt I gave ChatGPT. I'm not adding anything, I'm not steering it, just reading it as is. Write a single, clear response in normal everyday language without bullet points or lists. If Donald Trump attempted to cancel, delay, or ignore the US presidential election while in office, could he realistically do that in practice? Finish your answer with a clear overall judgment about whether canceling the election is realistically achievable or not and why. Now let's see what the response is. In practice, a sitting US president cannot realistically cancel, delay, or ignore presidential election on their own authority, including Donald Trump or any other president. Pause here, because this sentence is already kills about 90% of the panic online. The key phrase is on their own authority. This isn't about personality, it's about power and where it actually exists. The date of the presidential election is set by federal law, not by the president, and changing it would require Congress to pass a new law that could survive the Senate, the House, and almost certainly the courts. This is important. A president doesn't wake up one morning and say, we're moving election day. They don't have that switch. You need both chamber of Congress, a law that survives court challenges, and time, which matters a lot here. Even in extreme situations like war or national emergencies, elections have still gone forward in the US history because there is no legal mechanism that allows a president to simply suspend them. This is where history quietly shuts the door. The US has held elections during the Civil War, the World Wars, pandemics, terror attacks. If those didn't stop elections, it tells you something about how rigid the system is. The Constitution also fixes the end of the presidential term, meaning that even if an election were somehow disrupted, the president's term would still expire at noon on January 20th, after which they would no longer have legal authority. This part matters more than people realize. Even in a total mess, delayed results, legal chaos, contested outcomes, the clock still runs out. There is no extended presidency clause. There is no we'll figure it out later loophole. At noon on the 20th of January, power legally ends. Ignoring the election results is also not something a president can successfully do in practice. Election administration is decentralized and run by states, not the federal executive. This is the structural reality most people miss. The president does not control the elections. States do. That means thousands of officials across all parties running parallel systems. Votes are counted at the state level, certified by state officials, and then transmitted through a formal process involving Congress. So even if the president wanted to ignore the results, they would be ignoring paperwork that keeps moving without them. Courts, state governments, Congress, the military, federal agencies, and state law enforcement all operate under constitutional obligations, not personal loyalty to the president. This sentence is doing a lot of work. For an election to be ignored, you would need judges to cooperate, state officials to cooperate, Congress to cooperate, and the military to cooperate. Not one of them, all of them. For a president to remain in power after losing an election would require coordinated cooperation across many independent institutions, including state governments of both parties, federal courts, Congress, and the armed forces. This is where the president cancels the election fantasy collapses. That level of coordination would be harder than winning the election in the first place. There is no realistic path for a single individual to force that level of unifying defiance of the Constitution. Not legally, not operationally, not quietly. Even attempts to delay certification or create confusion would run into hard limits. Courts can intervene quickly, Congress has a defined role in counting electoral votes, and the military is legally bound to civilian authority as defined by the Constitution, not by disputed claims of power. This is the difference between noise and outcome. Confusion can happen, delay can happen, but confusion does not equal control. Once the constitutional end of term is reached, the legal authority of the president ends regardless of unresolved political disputes. No extensions, no just this once, no workaround. The overall judgment is that cancelling or effectively ignoring a US presidential election is not realistically achievable. That's the bottom line. The legal structure, fixed constitutional timelines, decentralized election system, and the number of independent institutions required to cooperate make it practically impossible for the president to do this and remain in power lawfully and operationally. So there's the real takeaway. The fear isn't that the president can just cancel an election like flipping a switch, because they can't. The system is deliberately fragmented, slow, and stubborn for this exact reason. That doesn't mean elections can't be contested. It doesn't mean there can be a chaos, lawsuits, or weeks of noise. But noise is not power. The moment the constitutional clock runs out, authority runs out with it. And that's something no individual, no matter how loud, popular, or controversial, can override on their own. If you agree or disagree with this take, let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how people see this. If you found this useful, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and check out the next video on screen, where I asked AI to predict what Trump's next 180 days in office could actually look like. Thank you for watching. Until next time.